Trucker Dump, episode 146. Boy, oh boy, do we have a good show for you today. We're going to talk about personal safety tips for truckers, and a lot of you are going to be a part of it. But before that, we got news stories about truck drivers and protesters, inspections and ELD coercion, more deadline extensions, and electric trucks. We'll also talk about health issues, including sleep apnea and amputees getting CDLs. Marijuana use is on the rise too, which makes sense with the insane changes to liability insurance the government's trying to make right now. We'll also discuss the government owning part of a major trucking company through a controversial bailout deal and how changes in routing could change the future for truckers. Top it off with a few emails from you and we'll wrap it up. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Pilot Flying J and Volvo Trucks.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by abouttruckdriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers. I've got a case of the sniffles today, so I'm going to try not to, sniff into the microphone too much. I'm sorry if I do. And enough of a really bad accent. I don't even know what that was. Was it English? Was it Australian? I don't know. Hey, for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Todd McCann. I'll be your host. I am a 23-year truck driver. I'm doing LTL right now. I did 22 years of over the road. I am also obviously a podcaster and a blogger. And I'm the author of 2 trucking ebooks, one called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life. You can check those both out at abouttruckdriving.com. Hey, I always like to talk about my sound quality on the show, right? Well, today I actually have another reason to talk about it again, because, hey, you don't want to hear it, but I am in a new office, not a new house, but we finally got one of our rooms set up as an office, so I don't know how this is going to sound. It's going to be interesting. I've got no sound insulation in here. I'm not talking into a wall full of clothes in the closet like I usually do. So it's going to be interesting to see how this comes out. And also, I am recording on a brand new 13-inch MacBook Pro. Yes, I bought one about a week before they announced they were coming out with new ones with new processors in them, and the rumor is they might actually have a touchscreen on the Macs, so real thrilled about that. But, oh well, this computer is loads better than the other. I am happy to report also that this podcast helped pay for this computer, not completely and fully, but I've been saving up for quite a while. So that tells you, that I'm not getting rich off this thing. But I do thank my sponsors that have helped me throughout these past years. And, those of you who have bought the books and things like that, or donated, which I think I've had one donation in the entire run of this. By the way, you can donate if you want to over at abouttruckdriving.com. But anyway, I do appreciate you all listening to the show, because when you listen, then I can get sponsors, and sponsors help pay for needed upgrades like this one. This is not a frivolous purchase. This is a much needed computer. My last one was a late 2008 MacBook Pro. So I had been using that thing for 12 years, and it was just starting to get a bit flaky. So anyway, let me know if you hear any difference in this sound whatsoever. I will be interested to know if you can. So hey, before we jump straight into the news, I wanted to bring up a topic that I didn't mention at all on the last podcast, and nobody mentioned it. Nobody wrote me to ask me what was going on, why I didn't mention it. But, right now we have this whole Black Lives Matter thing going on, and, police brutality and all that. And I just decided to stay clear of all of that. And the reason I did that is because a while back, I tweeted online that I was disappointed that one of my favorite tech podcasts was actually covering this information. And I didn't mean that this information is not important. All I meant was that I just wanted an escape from it for a while, because the talk is everywhere and you can't escape it. But of course, I had people jumping out of the woodwork telling me what a horrible person I was, because I was more worried about my tech podcast than the social problems in this world. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that I am purposely not talking about this stuff. Now, I am going to have a few news stories right here at the beginning that touch on the subject, and everything else I have to say about this will be in about 2 minutes in the main topic. That's it. Not going any further. So just wanted to clear that up. Also, before we get started, I wanted to mention I got some feedback. Well, yeah, it doesn't belong up here, does it? But I'm going to go ahead and hit it up anyway. This one was from Eric Lindau. I hope I'm saying your name right there, Eric. And I love these short emails. I just find them hilarious every time I get one. And this one, in the subject line of it, it just says golf swing sound. And in the body of the text, it just says, it's super annoying. Period. Well, I don't even know if you noticed on the last podcast, but I tried something a bit different and I didn't mention it on purpose. A lot of these podcasts, when they are like a news-oriented show, they will like play some kind of little indicator sound, like a little ding or a little whoosh or something, to let you know that they're moving on to the next story. Sometimes it's a little clip of music or something like that. And I didn't have anything like that, and I wondered if it would help. Because sometimes I feel like I'm just going from one story to the next, and, you might miss it if you're just, halfway listening to the show or whatever, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, crap, he's on a new story, and I wasn't even listening. So I thought it might be kind of an audio cue, but apparently Eric found it really, really annoying. I did thank him for sending in his feedback, because I love getting feedback. I love to know what you are thinking. And Eric voiced his opinion. So I am going to leave that golf swing sound out. And I know it sounds weird, a golf swing in a trucking podcast, but I was looking for little like toots of the horn or air brake sounds or something like that, and I just couldn't find any I liked. So I found this golf swing, just a type of a sound. And I found that in my Mac already, so I just used it. But apparently Eric hates it, so I'm going to leave it out. If you even noticed, I would love to hear from you and find out if, it was just wasted effort, because it is a little bit extra work. No big deal. But anyway, thanks, Eric, for writing in and sharing your opinion. Always interested in that. All right, let's say we get on with the news, because we have got a whole trucker's pea jug full of it. I mean, we got a lot of it. So here we go. Speaking of audio cues. All right, let me kick things off first here by just saying that if you're listening to this right now and it's after July 18th, you can just skip this story. Okay? Just skip it. There's should be a little skip button in the podcast app if you're using a podcast app, because this is old news at this point. As a matter of fact, this podcast is probably going to come out in the middle of what's going on here. Anyway, what this is Operation Safe Driver Week. If you remember back a while back, the International Road Check was scheduled for May 5th through 7th, and that was canceled due to the COVID-19 thing. Well, this is a different one. Again, it's called Operation Safe Driver Week. It is July 12th through the 18th. They are, however, going to be focusing on similar things to what International Road Check was going to focus on, and that is drivers. They're going to be still inspecting trucks and all that stuff like they normally do, but their big focus is going to be on ELDs and duty status. They're going to be checking to see if you're logging all your hours correctly, if you're going, if you're doing anything weird like logging PC time to deliver loads. They're going to be checking your paperwork as far as your DOT inspections and things like that. Now, I know we do have an extension, until the September 30th on a lot of this stuff, but they will know that, so that shouldn't be an issue. So anyway, this is going on, and I found an article over here on overdriveonline.com about it, just telling you what to be prepared for. So I'm just going to leave it at that, since probably most of you, by the time you hear this, it's probably already over. Hope you had a good week, and hope you didn't get busted for anything. All right, to get things moving here, we're going to talk a little bit about the protests, some things that are going on there, like I mentioned. And this first one I found on fleetowner.com. This article is called Truck Driver Safety a Top Priority Amid Nationwide Protests. I've been not too worried about the COVID stuff out there. I know it's going around, but, I'm more worried about these protests, because, boy, some of the videos you're seeing online and some of the stories you're hearing about the FedEx driver who ran over the guy who got in between his two trailers, the Keenan Advantage story that we'll be talking about here in a minute, and you've seen those videos and all that. It's a little worrying. So this article just kind of points out some things you need to know, just some ideas. Most of it is common sense, to be honest with you, but there's a little bit of good stuff in here. But anyway, these guidelines, are saying make sure you plan for road closures. I don't really know how you do that except for just, pre-planning and looking on your Google Maps or your if you use Google Maps, which again, don't do it as your only source. I've said that 800,000 times, or if you're trucking Atlas, or not your Atlas, but your trucking GPS unit, tells you that there's a road closure, be aware of that. Problem is those things are probably not going to be super, super updated and, up to the minute. So anyway, anything helps. Here's a good one that I really thought was a good idea. They say contact the delivery location to get the most current and timely conditions. They are probably going to know if anything is, if any of the roads into their place are blocked off. They're going to be the first to know it because it's going to affect their deliveries and things like that. And they will probably be the most up to date on that. Another tip is to plan ahead to park in a safe location outside the area, and that secures the truck. Yeah. Well, that's a no-brainer. You don't want to go down into downtown Minneapolis if you know there's a problem going on there. Also, drivers should keep their company posted and updated as they travel. They say what the driver is observing may be different than what a dispatcher is seeing on a computer screen. So communication is key because, that dispatcher will probably relay that to the rest of the fleet. I know my company is doing that right now. I know the protests have kind of died down at this point, but when they were hot and heavy going on, they were actually sending us messages through our computer when we signed in and out for our trips and stuff that it would say, please avoid I-80-94 near Gary, Indiana, because there's a protest scheduled for tonight, and they would suggest other routing to go around. So that's really key. It's really key for them to keep us informed. But, we got to do that ourselves too. As we are the driver. Ultimately, everything comes down to our responsibility. So, this last tip here is drivers and carriers should utilize all technology available to them. So, if you're going into, Minnesota, try to look up some information about protests in that area, get on social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you use, and, see if you can kind of keep up to date on this kind of stuff. So basically, it's just mostly common sense, but I do think that is a really good tip to go ahead and call in before you are heading into a shipper if you're unfamiliar with the area and what's going on in there. All right, Eric, no golf swing sound here. Hope you appreciate that. This next story I did find on overdriveonline.com. This one is about the Keenan Advantage driver who got caught in that protest up in Minneapolis. And boy, that was a scary video to watch. Those people were going nutso on him. And at first I thought, well, why? He's just creeping in traffic. I had seen a shortened version of it. But when you actually see the entire video, he was a ways back and he romped on it. I mean, I'm not saying he was going 80, but he was still cooking pretty good when he was coming up to that crowd. And I don't know. I mean, you see online all the time truckers saying, boy, if I ever encounter a protest, I'm just going to plow through them. But it's another thing when you got a whole road full of people standing in front of you. What do? Do you stop and let them have a chance at getting on your truck and, getting in trouble, and then you dragging somebody like that FedEx driver did and killing someone? What do you do? And the thing was, this guy, this driver got a lot of crap about, the way he handled this situation. He got arrested and, the thing was, though, in the end, they released him without any charges. Because what had happened, he wasn't driving into that thing on purpose like a lot of the headlines wanted you to believe. He got caught. It was just a weird timing thing. Basically, what had happened was a bunch of protesters had been over at the stadium in Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis, and they had been protesting down there, and all of a sudden they decided to move to the highway, to I-35. And this guy got on the road before the DOT had a chance to shut it down. So they put the cones and the barrels out to block that 35 off. But he was already past it at that point. He had no way of knowing. So he was just kind of trapped there. So he decided to, gas on it at first, I guess, but then he came to his senses, slowed down, and, then they were just jumping all over his vehicle and slamming the window and all kinds of stuff. They were throwing things at the truck. Scary situation. One thing I hadn't heard before, but was kind of interesting, is that some people drug him out and started beating on him, and other protesters who were in their right mind jumped in and stopped that beating from happening. So thank you to those people who, avoided another Reginald Denny thing, from LA. So at least, this driver walked away. He didn't get charged for anything. He's not badly injured, at least that I've not heard anything about. I don't know if you know this, but Keenan Advantage, they're a tanker company, and he was hauling, there was no fuel in it, but what if there had been, and you got people crawling all over your tanker and stuff? That's scary stuff. Anyway, I know what I would do in that situation, honestly. If I see it way down the road, and hey, that's another advantage of, looking way down the road when you're driving, is if you see a crowd of people like that way up ahead of you, I'm going to stop. And he had that whole road to himself because, like I said, he had made it just past the barriers before they shut it off. So if it had been me and I saw that, I'd have whipped a Yui. I'd have just gone back the other way. I'd rather get a ticket for driving in the wrong direction on the shoulder, of course, not down the middle of the highway, but I'd rather get a ticket for doing that than be in this situation where I'm confronted with, my own personal safety. So anyway, I don't know what you would do about that. Write in, let me know, truckerdump@gmail.com. What do you plan on doing? Because you probably do need to come up with a plan for this before, if it actually happens to you, you want to know what you're going to do ahead of time. I mean, if you can't turn around, if there's a whole bunch of traffic, and you just can't turn around, I guess I would just sit there as far back from the crowd as I can, and hopefully they don't move towards you if you're not, plowing through them. I mean, no load is so important that I want to kill somebody. But, if they're jumping all over my vehicle, I'm not going to sit there and get beaten either. So at that point, I'm going to start creeping forward slowly. But anyway, this is not legal advice, but I did read an article from a lawyer who said you would be justified in moving slowly forward if you hurt anybody or whatever, because that's considered self-defense at that point. They're trying to break into your truck. They're trying to harm you, get bodily harm on you, and, you have the right to defend yourself. So anyway, write in, let me know what your thoughts are on all this stuff. And, if you've been in any situations like that or just barely missed one, I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, truckerdump@gmail.com. Actually, that part I just talked about with the lawyer is actually in this next story from overdriveonline.com. It's called Staying Safe During Civil Protests When Avoidance is Not Possible. So that's where I read this in this other article. And they give some tips. A couple of I had not heard of before. Of course, the first one is keep your doors locked. Take your seatbelt off if you think you might be attacked. That way you can, if they're reaching through the window, you're not, strapped into your seat and you can't get away from somebody. And of course, keep your doors locked. I do that anyway as a course of habit going down the road, even though I'm driving at night most of the time now. I still do that. I don't want anybody coming up and truck jacking me. So, I don't just do it in bad neighborhoods. I do that everywhere. It says, beware of other forms of roadblocks. For instance, they could, these protesters could put a makeshift roadblock made of their own personal cars, or, just throw crap out in the road where you can't get around it. So be aware of that. It does say to keep your dash cam on so you can record what is going on, so you will be able to prove that you were being mobbed. If you decide to roll forward and you do end up injuring someone, you will have that to fall back on. And another point on that is most dash cams have a way to activate it, manually. So, like it might not register that it's a wreck because it isn't officially a wreck. So make sure if you have a dash cam in your truck, you find out ahead of time how to activate that thing. It's probably just a button on it somewhere. And, if something starts to happen like that, reach up and hit that button and just let it record. You don't want to get in trouble for, something you didn't do. This article also suggests that you call ahead to customers. Great idea. And they said, if you're hauling hazmat and you are anywhere near something like this, call 911 immediately because they're going to want to get out there. You don't want to be stuck in a situation where they get into your trailer. We've all seen the looting that is going on. People jumping on railroad cars and throwing stuff out as the train moves. They're doing it to trucks. So the last thing you want is somebody getting up there thinking they're getting a TV or a stereo and they throw out, something that's hazmat and it goes everywhere. That would be really bad. Although they would have it coming if they did it because they're breaking in. Looters. I don't mind the protesters, but the looters got no place. And this last one I thought was a really good tip and I didn't know, honestly. So maybe you didn't know either. It says, if you have time, crack your windows and turn off the ventilation system. What's that all about? Well, it says that windows that are down approximately a half an inch are harder to break than a window that's tightly closed. I guess that makes sense. If something's real tight in there, put a hammer on it, it would, it would break a lot easier than if it had some bend in it. Makes sense. It's worth a shot anyway, right? And as far as turning off your ventilation system, it says that it'll prevent smoke or tear gas in the air from getting into your cab. I don't know how well it'll keep it from it. It might get in there anyway. These trucks are not airtight, but, at least it's not sucking it in and blowing it in your face. So anyway, like I said earlier, just try to stay safe out there. Keep your eyes peeled on not only on the road ahead of you, so you don't find yourself in these situations, but if you're one of these truckers who doesn't have a smartphone and, you're not on Twitter and Facebook and things like that, this is one of those times when it's a really good reason to be, like, especially on Twitter. Twitter is like up to the minute. If you can find some trucking people to follow or, some of these DOTs that send out messages to warn people about this kind of stuff going on in the area. It's also pretty handy, if they're shutting down highways for weather and things like that. So if you're still going old school with a flip phone, time to upgrade to a smartphone. All right, well, enough about protesting for now. We drivers just try to stay safe on the road out here. And this next story, well, it ain't helping none. Part of getting started being safe is just getting good rest, right? Well, like I said, this ain't going to help. Wyoming DOT is closing 10 rest areas with approximately 80 truck parking spaces. Now, I could read these all off to you, but honestly, I've been through Wyoming a million times on 80, and I didn't recognize the name of any of these towns, so it probably wouldn't help you. Anyway, you can run through here and check. Just check out the link in the show notes. I'll go over with the show notes here in a second. I will. But anyway, they said they are closing these rest areas across the state due to budget cuts, so no surprise there, right? How funny, though, right at the time where, the government's all talking about how we need to improve truck parking, yet they're allowing all these spaces to be shut down. But hey, at least this guy that they quote here in the article has a solution. He says, quote, although these rest areas will close, motorists will still have access to facilities in neighboring communities. Each of the rest areas that are closing are within a reasonable distance of a town that has facilities for the public. Okay, fine. For cars, what about trucks? God, I love being left out of everything. Anyway, enough of that bad news. Like I said, if you're interested in which rest areas are shutting down, check out the link in the show notes. The show notes can be found in your podcast app. If it supports it, swipe left, swipe right, swipe somewhere and you can probably see them. It's a list of links to all these show notes, some pictures, things like that are going on. Also, you can find them at abouttruckdriving.com. Just search for TD146. That's the number of this episode. And you will find all those show notes at the bottom of the page. There's a big section down there listed as podcast show notes. Also, one thing I've been doing lately is if you are on my mailing list, I don't spam people who are on my mailing list. Every once in a while I'll do something promotional like, my books, a sale of my book or something like on that. But basically what I use it for is to let you know that a new episode is out. And what I've been doing is including those show notes in an email. It's not really a newsletter. It's just an announcement that the new show has come out. So you will know immediately when that show comes out, and you will also get all those show notes right there in a handy email for you. So you could just follow along right there and click to your heart's desire. So hey, if you're interested in subscribing through email to get those show notes, or you just want to learn how to subscribe to the podcast, just go to abouttruckdriving.com/subscribe, and all the gory details are there. And hey, if you still can't figure it out, just email me at truckerdump@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to help you figure this out. Enough about the show notes, because I already say show notes enough, because show notes are very important to people who enjoy show notes. All right, let's move on. This next story is kind of unexpected. It's called The Irony of E-Logging and Coercion. Complaints on a steady rise since the mandate. Did you know there was a rule prohibiting coercion, and it took effect in January of 2016? I didn't know that either, but it shouldn't surprise us. For those of you who don't know what coercion is, it's a weird little word, and that's basically, somebody trying to convince you to do something. So anyway, these coercion complaints have gone up apparently for the third year in a row, despite the fact that we're on e-logs now. Now you'd think, with e-logs, it's so hard to cheat them nowadays that carriers would quit trying to convince drivers to do things that are illegal. But apparently it keeps going up. There was there was 403 cases in 2016. Then it rose to 595, 826, and we're on pace to get over 1,000 in 2019. As of this thing, they're still tracking it, of course. But according to this survey, that's what you're looking at. So it just keeps going up. Now, why would that be? Well, they speculate that it's possibly just the fact that drivers are more aware, because now e-logs, are mandatory for everybody. They know they can't cheat them, and yet their companies are finding new ways for them to do it. For instance, one popular way is to tell the driver, if they're 30 minutes short of a delivery or something, they'll just say, I just turned the unit off. I don't know how they justify that on their end. Maybe they just say it malfunctioned or something like that. I don't know. Another popular thing is to ask the driver just to go to on-duty or off-duty personal conveyance, I should say, which, of course, is illegal because personal conveyance, you're not supposed to be advancing a load towards its destination. I mean, there are exceptions, to find a safe haven, but they did change those rules a little while back. But in general, if you're going straight to a shipper like that, that ain't going to fly. And I can tell you from personal experience, I got DOT inspected about a year ago, and I was standing there talking to the officer while, we were waiting for the repair truck to show up. And he was showing me in his computer some examples of how drivers were falsifying logs. They would say they showed up someplace, and they actually, when you actually look in the logbook, it's logging your mileage. You can't change that. So because the e-log is getting all that stuff directly from your device, from not your device, but from your engine, So he's saying you can see right here, if you know what you're looking for, how they falsified it, how they went on duty, and finished the rest of this trip. He was just showing me all these different examples. He said, you just need to know what you're looking for. So, hey, these guys are trained, and guys and gals, I should say, they're trained and know what to look for. So don't expect they're just going to turn a blind eye. So, hey, if you are getting coerced by your dispatcher or anybody else in your company, you need to report that to the FMCSA. And I'd honestly be reporting it to safety. Would be the first people I'd go to. As a matter of fact, one of the tips I like to give to younger drivers, not necessarily younger drivers, I should say newer drivers, because there are older, newer drivers. But anyway, you get the gist of what I'm saying. One of the tips I like to give them is if somebody is trying to coerce you into driving illegally or even driving out of your comfort level, if there's snow all over the ground and you've only been driving for a year and you're not comfortable, you are not safe to anybody if you don't feel comfortable. So if they are trying to tell you you need to keep moving because other drivers are moving, well, you know what? You are the captain of your ship, as one of my friends would say. Mike would say that. You're the captain of your ship. So, and that's true. You are. So if somebody is trying to get you to do that, my first suggestion is just say, okay, well, patch me through to safety department. I need to talk to them about this. That dispatcher will change his tune so freaking quick, it's not even funny. Seriously. They're not going to let you go over to safety department and tell them what he just tried to make you do. You got to remember, safety department, their number one goal is to keep everybody safe and not have wrecks. They don't care about that load getting there on time near as much as that dispatcher does. But like I've said a million times, no load is worth your life or even damaging your driving record by having an accident from driving, in conditions that you are not feeling safe. So anyway, interesting little article there on e-logs. And interestingly enough, I had some e-log problems this past week and I had to run paper logs for a couple of days. And I got to say, I miss the e-logs. The paper logs, they kind of suck. You always got to update everywhere you're at. And, it's not you get around to the 15 minutes and you always have to know which city you're in. You stop in some little podunk truck stop somewhere and you got to go in and ask where you're at or look on your app or something like that. It was just, think about it. 4 or 5 years ago, we never would have said this, but I think a lot of drivers now actually enjoy having e-logs. Not only are they way more convenient, you don't have to keep track of anything yourself, but also I think they keep us from being coerced. Of course, not according to that last article, but that's beside the point. It's safer for everybody. I think, though, that, you can't cheat these things as much. Send your hate mail to truckerdump@gmail.com. All right, let's move on. We are blue in the face about the new hours of service that are coming out in September. Now, I've seen a couple of sources. One says September 30th, others say September 29th, whatever. It's still a ways off, so I'll keep you updated on that. But anyway, there's been some rumors that those hours of service are going to be delayed. But hey, let's look at thetruckersreport.com where I found this article. And this one's called FMCSA says Congress can't make them delay hours of service changes, expects rollout to proceed as planned. Okay, what's going on here is these hours of service, they've kind of tacked this onto the highway funding bill that was passed by the House recently. Now, the House is treating this like a stimulus important thing for our economy because of COVID and everything. We need to really get this passed. And while we all know that the rebuilding our bridges and our roads and, stuff like that is very important. The Republicans are actually, I forgot to mention that of course, you probably know this, that the House is controlled by the Democrats. So they pushed all this through. But the Republicans in the Senate, they control the Senate there. It has to pass them too. And they're saying that this infrastructure is not fast enough for it to be warranted to be in a stimulus package. Anyway, they're saying that, infrastructure is spread out over a long period of time. It's not anything that's immediate that will affect our economy immediately. It is important, but it's not immediately important to try to get it passed under the guise of, COVID protection or whatever. So anyway, they say this is not going to happen. They are not going to pass this, even though the House already has. So everybody expects this to just, keep going forward as planned. So we should see those new hours of service sometime at the end of September. Furthermore, I saw another article. It's not in this one, but I saw another one that says Congress doesn't even have the authority to control something like this or delay something like this. Now, I think I forgot to mention that the reason they want to delay it is because they're saying that these new rules, the 4 new rules that went into effect or will be going into effect, are going to make drivers more unsafe. Now, I can't imagine that would be the case if the FMCSA is allowing them to happen. I don't know, because, they also allowed the e-log mandate, and a lot of drivers think that makes us more unsafe too. So, matter of opinion, I guess. But anyway, like I was saying, Congress supposedly doesn't even have the authority to put a delay on something like that or order more tests and studies. That is an FMCSA and a Department of Transportation thing. So I don't know if that's true or not, but hey, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Congress is sticking their nose in where it doesn't belong, because that's how they roll. Ugh. Why is it that I always feel icky after I talk about the government? All right, next up, more extensions. Found this on thetruckersreport.com. Truck driver training, license renewal, medical certification waivers get another extension. Yes, another one. So apparently if your CDL or your medical card expired on or after March 1st, you are now allowed to go until September 30th to get that updated. The initial deadline was set for June 30th, but they've decided to go on out to September 30th. Of course, this is because of the COVID thing and the Department of Revenue or the Driver's License Bureau, wherever you got to get that done. Most of them have been closed, and it's been really hard to get this stuff done. So until they get caught up and we get everything opened back up again, you're going to have till September 30th to get that done. Obviously, if you can get it done earlier, don't delay, because you'll probably forget, and then you'll be too late, and then you'll be grounded. Don't want that. Also included in this is a waiver that will allow you, if you have a learner's permit, to continue to drive a semi without a licensed driver in the passenger seat. They still have to have a licensed driver in the truck somewhere, but they no longer have to be sitting in the passenger seat. Now, I thought at first, what the heck, but apparently there is a fine point to this, that they're not just letting a brand new driver who has no experience drive without the licensed driver and the trainer being right there with him. What this is for students who have already passed the test and the trainer knows that they can pass the test, because then it's a technicality. They're just trying to get back to get their license renewed and switched over from a learner's permit to an actual CDL. So that's really what the base of that is. At first I thought, what are they doing? But now that I understand what's going on, I'm like, yeah, okay. They've already proven they can drive. The trainer was going to pass him and said he's good to go. So we got to rely on those trainers to make good choices. So if you're a trainer, please make good choices. It ain't worth running your trainee like a mad dog just to get some extra miles. Maybe to you, but it's not to us. All right, let's move on to a couple of driver health issues here. If you've been diagnosed with sleep apnea or think you might have it, you really need to pay attention to this one, and I would suggest going to the show notes and clicking on the link to get all the gory details on this one, because it's a pretty long article, but it's kind of important. I mean, I have honestly heard that most people who have a CPAP machine when they sleep actually love it. Once they get used to it, they feel much more refreshed when they are awake, because you're getting that oxygen pumped into your brain all night long. So they feel wonderful. So they might not want to give it up. Maybe you don't want to give it up. But anyway, here's what's going on. I found this on overdriveonline.com. This one is called Evidence Emerges of Stricter Approach and Confusion Around Sleep Apnea Screening. So basically, here's what happened. Back in 2016, the Department of Transportation issued some guidelines for, sleep apnea, and, who would need to be tested for it and who would need to be shut down and things like that. But the problem is, these were never mandated rules. They were just guidelines sent out. But apparently there have been lots of doctors who got this confused and thought they were actual rules to live by when they're not. They're just suggestions. They're guidelines. So they talk about the 17-inch neck and thing like that. If your neck's bigger than 17 inch, you you immediately have to go for tests like that. And apparently that's not exactly the case. So again, like I said, just go in here and read this article if you want to get rid of your CPAP machine, or you just don't want the stipulation of having, the sleep apnea, the stigma of having sleep apnea. Don't really think there's a lot of stigma to go along with that. It's pretty acceptable nowadays. But if you don't want to mess with it, you don't want to be diagnosed with it, so to speak, go check this out and see if maybe there's something that can help you out. Maybe you could go back in and, specify, hey, these are only guidelines. I don't think I actually have sleep apnea. So anyway, there's a guy suing over this right now because, he is overweight and he always has been, but he doesn't have any signs of sleep apnea, but they're making him go for tests and things like that. And he's, he keeps getting cleared for treatment, but they keep sending him back and he's getting pissed about it. Don't blame him, just because you're overweight don't mean you got sleep apnea. So anyway, go check out that link in the show notes. Hey, it's time to hear from our sponsor, Pilot Flying J. Once again, Pilot Flying J wants you, the professional trucker, to know that they know you are the ones responsible for keeping things moving out there. It's a challenging time out there, and Pilot Flying J wants to say thanks to all of you by giving you more rewards and more points. How are they going to do that? Well, this program is called the Push for Points, and it can get you up to that 4 points per gallon level faster than you've ever done it before. Now you can reach 4 points per gallon after only 6 qualifying fills, and a qualifying fill is 75 gallons. Heck, you're doing that to get a shower anyway, right? Now, Push 4 Points is only available in the Pilot Flying J app, and it's only for a limited time. So you need to get over to pilotflyingj.com/app and download the app. Or you can just search in the Google Play Store or on the iPhone in the App Store. Again, it's called Pilot Flying J app. Pretty straightforward, right? And again, this is a free app and there's all sorts of benefits. So how do you get this Push 4 Points started so you can start raking in the bucks? Because basically, points are money. First, you got to sign into the app. No big deal, just like any other app. And then you simply have to push a button to activate the Push for Points. That's really all there is to it. You just have to do it at the beginning of each month. Once you've done that, just fill your tank with at least 75 gallons of fuel. Once you do that, you're going to start saying, ka-ching! That's right. Your points per gallon is going to increase after each qualifying fill. That means you'll be earning 2 points per gallon after only 2 qualifying fills. After 3 fills, you're going to get 2.5 points. 4 fills get you 3 points. 5 get you up to 3.5 points. And finally, you've reached the pinnacle. After 6 qualifying fills, you'll be earning 4 points per gallon for the rest of the month. Now again, you could probably knock out 6 qualifying fills in the first 6 days of the month. That leaves you what, 25 days to be racking up 4 points per gallon? Wow, that's a lot of points. So what are you going to spend them on? Well, your rig's not the only thing that needs fuel, right? When you get hungry or thirsty, you can redeem points for in-store savings on the essentials, as well as merchandise for you and your rig. They've even got special deals that are in-app only, so check those out. You can also use these points to reserve a parking spot in case you're near one of these big cities late at night and it's impossible to find a spot. Once you get parked, if you've got more points available, which you know you will at 4 points per gallon, you can use them to access the Wi-Fi at participating Pilot and Flying J locations. Seriously, this is an awesome deal and it's an awesome app, so check it out. All kinds of good stuff goes on in there, from just information on truck stops to reserving showers to starting a fuel pump from the cab of your truck instead of having to stand out there in the blistering heat. So again, from Pilot Flying J, thank you for all you do, drivers. And stay safe out there on the road. Terms and conditions apply for Push for Points. See pilotflyingj.com/app for details. And thanks to Pilot Flying J for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. Man, before we move on to this story, I just got to tell you, this computer is freaking awesome. I didn't realize how slow my 2008 computer was. I probably should have, but I didn't until I started using this and recording with this thing. Usually when I pause the recording for a second, it does a little audio adjustment and raises it to the volume level that it needs to be. And it used to take, 2-3 seconds with my old computer. And now it's like, it's just up immediately on this. So that is pretty freaking awesome. And also, I mentioned in the last podcast that it took me 12 hours to edit it. Well, I probably could have shaved about 2 hours off that if I wasn't. What would happen is I would try to click and drag some, like an audio clip or something, and it would stop the drag right in the middle of it and drop it wherever it wanted to. So I was, had weird clips right in the middle of audio that was good, and I had to pick it out and back up and, undo all those errors and things like that. So anyway, more behind the scenes stuff that you don't care about. But man, I am loving this computer. It is fast. I'm digging it. Anywho, we got one of these awesome trucking law articles from overdriveonline.com. It is called Severe Physical Setback Might Not End Career. And this is all about having a handicap. I don't know if that's the word. I'm probably going to get crucified for that one. But a disability. Basically, if you have, the handbook, the safety handbook, for drivers actually says, you can't have a loss of a foot, a leg, a hand, or an arm. But it does say you can get a skills performance evaluation certificate, which is like a waiver, and then you can go ahead and drive with those things. So basically what this article is saying is that they look at each individual case and, for instance, if they mention if you have an amputation of your hand, well, that's not going to get any worse, right? It's just an amputated hand. Now, maybe they might require you to have a prosthetic hand or something like that. Or maybe you just need to prove that you can shift the truck with it. But if you have a disease or something that is going to be ongoing and it's going to continually get worse, like a nerve disease or something like that, like they list multiple sclerosis, it's progressive. So, they're not going to give you the waiver for something like that because it's going to get worse over time. But, if you're missing some fingers or whatever, that's not going to keep you from driving a truck. You just have to prove the ability to be able to hold on to the steering wheel, shift the gears, and also to be able to operate any special equipment you have for your truck. Like we've all probably seen those videos. If you haven't seen them, it's pretty cool. You should check it out. Like a video of a truck driver who has got a wheelchair lift on the side of his bunk area, and that thing goes all the way ground. He gets out, he pumps his fuel, gets back, wheels his chair back up on it, takes him back up in the cab, and he drives like that. So clearly he's not using his feet, he's using all hand controls. But you just have to be able to basically, show you can control the vehicle. And once you do that, you can get a waiver. Now, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to this. Apparently, there's been more than 3,000 certificates issued to truckers who have missing limbs or whatever. If you ever encounter yourself in this situation, you'll probably just look it up online. But if you're encountering that right now, you can go to the FMCSA medical at dot.gov. I'll put a link in the show notes to that, and I'll put the phone number in there also. That is to the what they call the SPE program, which again stands for the Skills Performance Evaluation. And it kind of walks you through the steps of how you need to go about doing that. You got to get a packet sent to you, and then you got to fill it all out and things like that. All right, how about we talk about some weed? This one I found on truckinginfo.com. It's called Marijuana Use Top Finding in First Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse Report. You know what this clearinghouse is, right? Remember we talked about it recently? This is the thing where you need to sign up if you want to get hired anywhere after 2020. It's kind of a mandatory thing because these carriers are going to be checking this. And what it does is it tracks your drug tests that you've had, random drug tests and things like that, whether you've ever refused one, what the results of. And the idea, is that if a carrier finds out that you've refused drug tests or you've not passed them, then they won't hire you and effectively, weed out the bad drivers. So, hey, the message is don't do drugs. But anyway, apparently it's not working very well because, as this quote says, the number of positive marijuana tests jumps off the page. Yeah, it really does. If you look at the chart, it's way up there. Apparently, 50% of the people who failed the test, who got a positive result for drugs, it was marijuana. Now, what I found funny was, well, not funny, sad really, and interesting, is that the number 2 was cocaine. Of course, it was way behind. But here's my thought. Who do these truck drivers work for that they're getting paid so much money that they can afford cocaine? That's a really expensive habit to have. But anyway, the marijuana, like I said, 50% of the positive tests, and it's way up there. I should also mention that this report was from the very beginning of the clearinghouse when it started up through May of 2020. So fairly recent stuff. And this is the first study that's come out of this and the first results. So they were finding this really interesting, as I am. But this article is really all about the stats. This next one is from overdriveonline.com, and it's more speculation about what's going on here. This one is actually called Rise in Marijuana Use Among Truckers Expected to Continue. So they're expecting it to get worse and worse. I don't really know why they say that. It doesn't really say in the article. It actually says that the overall number of drug and alcohol tests that have been positive, meaning, you're drunk or high or whatever while you're at work, those have actually gone down significantly through the past few years. It says they've seen a 36% reduction in DOT positives across the board from 2019 to 2020, and nearly 42% reduction in marijuana positives. But, again, this percentage, 50%, actually this article says it's 61% of the ones that do test positive, it's marijuana. So anyway, they do speculate in here that it could be skewed. These numbers could be skewed a little bit because of COVID-19. Basically they're saying a lot of drivers were sent home, didn't have a lot of freight. Like me, I was laid off for a while, and they're thinking maybe, there were some drivers getting into smoking a little reefer because they didn't figure they'd be back to work anytime soon, and maybe they got called back a little bit earlier than normal. So anyway, that's one speculation on it. Now, they did mention CBD oil and CBD products. Apparently, they're saying the CBD could give you a false positive, or it could even show up positive, but they would be able to tell that it's CBD. I don't know. There's some confusion on this in the article, but you can read it. It says here, CBD still contains THC, which is the drug part of weed. And it says, and if tested after recent use, it would come up positive. You cannot take the main ingredients out of the plant. Now, for me, I know I'm not going to use that stuff because I do hear there's benefits of it, but I don't want to come up with any positive, even if it's a false positive. It's just not worth it to me. But hey, that's your choice. Yeah, I want to keep my record clean. And according to this clearinghouse, like I say, they're really going to be watching it. I guess all the carriers are not hitting this clearinghouse up yet, but they will be in the future. And if you want to get hired anywhere, they're going to be checking you out in there. So anyway. Hey, speaking of people who've been smoking too much doobage, well, the old government's at it again. I got 2 articles here. One is on thetruckersreport.com and the other is on overdriveonline.com. Check out the links to both of these in the show notes. Basically, what is happening is there has been an amendment passed in the House. This is the highway bill that we spoke of a minute ago. It did pass in the House, hasn't made it through the Senate yet. But part of that bill is that they are trying to increase a owner-operators minimum liability insurance requirements from what it is now, $750,000 to $2 million. Apparently, they tried to get it up to $5 million a while back, but that didn't go through. So they're going for $2 million. Basically, they're saying these old limits were set 40 years ago. So, it's time to update them. But last year, the American Trucking Association and the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, OIDA, they argued that fewer than 1% of truck crashes actually breached the $750,000 minimum. So they don't understand, if only 1% are getting above that amount, why are we having to everybody raise it? Now they're talking about, this is really going to kill owner-operators, small business guys. This insurance is already ridiculous. David Owen is quoted in here. He's president of the National Association of Small Trucking Companies. He quoted that a decade ago, If you were a better owner-operator with a good record, you might pay $5,000 to $7,000 per truck per year. And now the numbers are closer to $20,000. So it's already gone up that much. Imagine what it would be if, they had to jump from, they were required to carry, instead of $750,000, $2 million. Whew. They're saying that probably put a lot of people out of business, and they probably would. Like I've said on here before, owner-operators are always talking about how much money they make, and you can, but also there's a lot of owner-operators out there squeaking by and actually, bringing home less money than I do as a company driver. So if you are one of those owner-operators who does barely squeak by, you better start voting, because this is going to be bad if it goes through. Of course, we don't really have to worry about it that much at the current juncture, because like I said on a previous news story that, this highway bill still has to get through the Senate, and they've already said they're going to knock it down. But hey, like I said, they tried to get $5 million in before. Now they're going for $2 million. My guess is they'll find another way to stick it in there somewhere in some other legislation and get that passed. And, if this highway bill doesn't pass through the Senate, they're going to start all over again on this and probably shove it back in there again and see what happens. So anyway, just be aware of that if you are an owner-operator. All right, speaking of questionable moves by the government, let's get on with this story that, it's been in the news a lot lately, raising a lot of stink, not just in the trucking industry, but outside the trucking industry in the finance world also. This one I found on overdriveonline.com and also on the truckersreport.com. I'm going to be dabbling a little in and out of both of these, so just go to the show notes and check them both out. Anyway, overdriveonline.com one is called YRC is getting $700 million government bailout for nearly 30% stake in fleet. Ooh, okay. So if you don't know, YRC Worldwide is made up of 4 different companies: Holland, New Penn, Reddaway, and YRC Freight. And they have been, the quote, significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And they are getting this $700 million as part of a loan under the CARES Act that's supposed to help, companies stay in business through the pandemic. And the thing is, the big thing that's raising questions here is that it's a $700 million loan, and part of the agreement was that now the government owns 30% ownership in YRC. And the reason they said YRC was so important was because they haul about 60% of the Department of Defense stuff, and I'm pretty sure all of that goes through YRC. I don't think Holland, New Penn, and Reddaway haul a lot of that stuff, but I'm not sure on that. But I think that's the way that works. But anyway, this loan is $350 million up front, and that's to catch up on pension payments that they're behind on, healthcare payments, and other obligations, like lease payments and things like that. And then they're going to get a second $350 million as capital investment for trailers and trucks and stuff like that. Now, both of these loans are due on September 30th of 2024. That's significant because here's the thing. Maybe you do or don't know about this, but I was looking at a list of best LTL carriers, and it had all the big ones: Old Dominion, Saia, YRC, XPO, all of these. And the only one I saw that was in the negative as far as profit was YRC. I mean, they have been in trouble since 2008, right around the Great Recession. They've been in trouble. Now I'm quoting from this article on the truckersreport.com. Apparently, they have they borrowed $400 million in 2011, another $300 million in 2014, and just this past September, they borrowed another $600 million. And all of this for a company that has a market cap of just under $100 million. That means they're valued at a little under $100 million. Yet, they've got $880 million in debt at this point. So, they're saying, this article says they're operating at a loss thanks to the debt and aging fleet, high union membership levels, and high executive pay. For instance, the CEO, he brought home $4.4 million in total compensation, including 2.2 of that as a bonus. Now, here's the thing that is really getting people, eyebrows raised, is because the CEO of YRC was just placed on a board. It's called the Coronavirus Revival Task Force or something like that. Anyway, it's a group of business, big CEOs and stuff that are designed to help, the government figure out how to get out of, this mess. And why they would get somebody from YRC, I don't have any idea, because clearly they don't know how to get out of a mess. I mean, they've been in a mess since 2008. So anyway, I don't understand that, but it is fishy, that he's on this board all of a sudden, and then, not long after that, they get this big raise. And also a former YRC chairman, president, and CEO, he was nominated to serve on one of the board of governors for the United States Postal Service recently. This was like 12 days before this loan went through. So that's a little fishy too. Beyond me to say that the Teamsters are not corrupt, because they've had their problems in the past. They've had the government involved. It's not slander because it's true. They've had government oversight trying to, figure this one out and, try to keep their nose clean, the Teamster part of it. But like I say, YRC's been in a lot of trouble. Now, I did notice in here that they blame some of this on high union membership costs. Now, I do have to say, I am a Teamster now. I've mentioned that. And I'm not just trying to defend them, but I'm saying from what I have seen and from what I've talked to other people in the LTL industry, that total compensation from a union LTL person is not that much more, and sometimes it's actually less than non-union LTL companies. It's just LTL pays more. That's just the way it is. It's across the board. In everything I've seen, it's across the board. They get paid way more than an over-the-road driver. So I don't know if they can really blame this on high union membership costs. I can see where they might blame it on high executive pay, because one of my beefs has always been, why does a CEO make a lot of money if they're not succeeding? I don't have a problem with the CEO making a lot of money because they have a lot of responsibility. If their company is successful and they're leading them down the right path and they're making money for their shareholders, great. Compensate the guy. He's doing a good job. He's, a lot of people think a CEO is sitting back with his, feet up on the counter and, or on his desk, or he's out playing golf. But most of them actually probably work longer hours than the people who work for them. I don't have a problem with CEOs as long as they're earning their keep. But how these guys at YRC are keeping their jobs and how they're making $4.4 million to drive their company into the ground, I got no freaking idea. But anyway, it's just scary. I wonder what's going to happen in 4 years when this loan comes due. $700 million. Like I said, they got $880 million in debt right now before this $700 million, the way I understand it. So I don't know how they plan on paying that back. I don't know why the government would want a stake in this company. Honestly, they say it's vital to keep their Department of Defense going. I don't really understand that. It seems like to me you could just give it to a different LTL carrier, but whatever. Anyway, I just found that really interesting that the government is getting involved in trucking. And I did read an article that says that they will not have any voting privileges, like they won't be able to say how the company is run. But we know how that goes. They probably will have some say in it. And hopefully, I'm glad all these Teamsters are keeping their jobs. My fellow brotherhood out there, I'm glad they're keeping their jobs. And, YRC employs, like, I think the article said 30,000 people, something like that. So, it's a lot of jobs affected. But, man, they really need to figure out how to bail themselves out of this problem. And I don't know how they're going to do it, especially in 4 more years. They've had, 12 years to bail themselves out and they didn't manage it. So I'm not sure how this is going to work out. Anyway, interesting that the government is getting involved in this. I'm thinking maybe they should see if the people who approved this loan are actually in the drug clearinghouse and came up positive. Oh boy. Hey, speaking of people who've lost a few brain cells, CDLlife.com reports California passes the first in the world rule to ban sale of all new diesel trucks by 2045. Okay. Where to start with this one? There's a quote in here from Jared Bloomfield, California Secretary for Environmental Protection. His quote, "California is an innovative juggernaut that is going electric. We are showing the world that we can move goods, grow our economy, and finally dump dirty diesel." They say that 70% of the smog-causing pollution and 80% of carcinogenic diesel soot comes from trucks, even though they number only 2 million among the 30 million vehicles registered in the state. Well, Again, I would like to point out I don't know how California thinks they're going to support all these electric vehicles when they can't even keep their citizens, lights on in their house. They have to alternate days or whatever, during the peak times, just to have enough electricity to go around. So again, where are your brain cells? If there wasn't more to this, I think this could actually be done by 2045. That is, 25 years from now, and that is a long time. But here's the problem. They won't let go of the current stuff. They're still trying to get more and more strict on this stuff. They said, this is CARB, the California enviro Nazis out there. They announced that they plan to crack down on emissions on existing trucks with 2 new regulations just in the coming months here. One of the regulations will set a stringent new limit on NOx, that's in quotes, and require that new trucks that still use fossil fuels include the most effective exhaust control technology during the transition to electric trucks. I keep saying electronic trucks. I don't know why. Electric trucks. And the second proposed regulation would set requirements for the larger trucking fleets in California to transition to electric vehicles. Okay, I get we all want to move towards electric because it's supposedly, zero emission. Got to remind people that electricity has to be made somewhere, which means those coal plants are just going to be pumping it out more and more. Nuclear is effective, but people are afraid of nuclear. All of the green stuff that was under the Obama thing, not trying to get political here, but all of the green initiative that was pushed for 8 years, a lot of that has not come to fruition. All this wind power that they talked about and solar power, it's just not providing enough. We're tapping into our own oil sources and we're, still burning coal mostly in the States. That's what's happening. So, they're just like, well, let's just make it all zero emissions. Well, first off, like I said, you're not making it zero emissions. But even if so, if you expect these companies, like these manufacturers of trucks, to get to the point where they can use all electric all the time, you need to give them, you need to quit tightening the reins on all the current emissions thing. It's already causing enough problems as is, all the weird emissions fixes that they're trying to do to these engines. And it just causes sensor malfunctions and they're always screwing up and DPF filters are always getting clogged up and all that good junk. So wouldn't it be nice if they just said, hey, let's just keep the standards where they're at right now. Why don't you engine manufacturers start focusing on electric, putting all your efforts into that? But now they're just like saying, here, you got to focus on this, keep getting better at that, but you also have to be ready for this electric change. Anyway, they're California. I don't expect them to make sense. But hey, there's also an article on transport topics. That's ttnews.com. This one's called House Democrats Will Call for 100% Clean Cars by 2035. Now, this one seemed crazy to me at first. I thought, oh, great, the Democrats are just going nutso with their climate control stuff again. And, but then I got to think about it. A lot of cars already have an electric version. All they'd really have to do is just, perfect these electric engines and just fit them into other models of their cars, and then weed out the gas ones eventually. It sounds doable by 2035. Again, that's 15 years from now. So that's plenty of time to actually get that done. But again, we're looking at the infrastructure for this. How are we going to get these things charged? Yes, you can put electric chargers in on the current gas stations and replace them eventually. But for these trucks, like California, I don't know how they're planning on doing that. There is an article I found here on Transport Topics, and this one is called West Coast Utilities Offer Plan for Charging Stations Along Interstate 5. So here's one approach to this. They're planning on installing 27 charging sites along I-5 at 50-mile intervals for medium-duty electric vehicles, such as delivery vans. And they're going to do this by 2025 as an experiment. Okay, that's all fine. These are medium-duty electric vehicles, but it's one charging station every 50 miles. How many are going to first use that because they're delivery vehicles? If they can make it all day, they'll just go back to their yard, their terminal or whatever, and charge there. Are they really going to need those? And also, that doesn't help the large truck industry at all. One charger or a charger here and there, along the interstate. I don't know. I mean, it's hard enough to find parking, right? Let alone have to find parking right by one of these electric charging stations. Like I said, I think this is doable, honestly, by 2035. All the cars being electric, I'm just not sure you can get trucks there by 2045. You just got to have that infrastructure, and it just ain't there, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of money being poured into it. Maybe it will when it's more important, and they're getting closer, but I think they need to jump on this stuff now. Next up, we've got another Transport Topics article at ttnews.com. This one is called DOT Launches AV Test Initiative. AV obviously stands for Automated Vehicles. Basically, this is a big group. I guess it's a group. It's a bunch of people sign up for it. It's an organization that is designed to, it's a program, I guess, designed to keep the public and other companies informed of what's going on in the automated vehicle world. So, for instance, it will tell you like what roads are being used for automated vehicles. That way, like the general public won't freak out if they see a truck driving down the road without a driver in it, like they're getting ready to do in Arizona. I think it's Arizona. Yeah, pretty sure Arizona, there's going to be some testing down there. And, it's just a way for everybody to jump into this thing and to try to keep everybody informed of what the other people are doing. I don't know exactly how that's supposed to help, but I think one key thing they said in here was that, quote, public trust will be key to the adoption. And that's true. People still have they're really not sure about these automated vehicles, to see a truck or a car for that matter go down the road without anybody in it. It's tricky. They don't trust us truck drivers, but they trust, a robot even worse, or not even a robot, a non-existent robot. So anyway, this is going to be interesting to see how that, if this affects anything. They've already got a bunch of participating companies, like Beep, who I don't know that is, Cruise, don't know, Fiat, Chrysler, companies like Toyota and Uber and Waymo. Numerous states are involved, so like state DOTs can get involved in this too. Anyway, just a way to kind of keep everything coordinated and hopefully push all this stuff through. And I say hopefully, in their words, they're hoping to push it all through. I don't really care if it ever goes through, honestly, but it's coming whether we like it or not. So if you want more information on that, check out the link in the show notes. Now, here's another ditty from Transport Topics. This one is called FHWA Grant Supports Automated Truck Corridor on Interstate 70. So, apparently the federal government granted $4.4 million in support of an automated truck corridor. This is on I-70 between Indianapolis and Columbus. It's about a 150-mile stretch, I think is what they said. And it is going to be like new lanes that they put in, dedicated only to automated trucks. So, automated vehicles, I think, in general. So, unmanned vehicles. That's what it's designed for. It'll be on its own lane. So the idea being that people will be less worried about it if it's over there. They can just wreck the truck and they're not going to kill anybody over there. But anyway, that's what this is designed to do. It's interesting to me. I wonder, I mean, it's $4.4 million. I mean, are they planning, is this going to be the only test area? I wonder. Like I said, they're already doing those down in Arizona on public roads. So not really sure why we need to build, specific highways for this and spend government money on it. But I guess, for public safety, they're going to be freaked out, if you don't do something like that, especially on a busy corridor. I guess that is the one thing that kind of does make sense. Arizona out there on I-10 or I-8 is way less populated than, I-70 in Indiana and Ohio. That's a very busy highway. So I honestly don't know why they just don't test it in areas that don't have as many cars or trucks around it. Why do they need to do it in Ohio and Indiana? Anyway, I don't even know why I try to make sense of what the government does. So, anyway, that's happening. So it's already been approved, so it will happen. If you start seeing construction on that stretch of interstate between Indy and Columbus, well, you'll know what's going on. In this last article, I also found on Transport Topics, link in the show notes, and basically it is just kind of a think piece. I was just really interested in this because I've said this multiple times on the podcast that the way I see the trucking industry going is they are going to try to make shorter runs and, eliminate long haul. Well, they're not going to eliminate long haul altogether. I think that's always going to be there. But I think a lot of freight in this country could be moved in a different way. Like you could just make the route shorter. You could meet another driver halfway and they could take it, the opposite direction. Both of you could go home. Things like that. Lots more drop yards right off the interstate or something where you could just pull in there and meet another driver. And they're trying to figure out a way to do this very efficiently. And that's what this article is all about. They mention like not even like within a company, how often you'll take a load, pick up somewhere, and you'll take it to another driver who drives for your company, and they will take it the rest of the way, something like that. But they're trying to figure out ways to like split the cost of that load, so you don't even have to do that just within your carrier. Like somebody from U.S. Express could take a load and meet somebody in Atlanta, Georgia, and somebody from J.B. Hunt could pick it up and take it the rest of the way. And they would just divide how much the cost of that load pays between what miles each driver actually worked. So that's a very interesting concept. I had always thought it was going to be more like, within the company, just lots of relays and they just have to, get drivers back home within their company. That's the way I thought it was going to go, but I never even dawned on me that they could do it just by splitting the cost of the load. So that's interesting to me. And I think that's the way they're going to have to go in the future because, they're having trouble finding drivers because, these newer drivers just don't want to stay out on the road for 2-3 weeks at a time. They want to have a social life. They want to have a family life, and if they want to get these newer drivers, I think they're going to have to change their model eventually. And this looks like a good step in that direction. So anyway, like I said, it's just kind of a think piece. I really enjoyed this article and the thought they put behind it and what they're planning on doing. It's kind of a long article, but it's well worth a read. So go check that out at ttnews.com. And of course, there is a link in the show notes. Well, that is going to sum up the news. Boy, I'm recording this on 4th of July weekend. I think it's the 5th now. So I probably won't get this edited until the next week. This one is coming out late. I apologize for that, but hey, I got super busy. They've been running my butt off at work, and I got to go out Sunday night too. So like I said, they're running me to death, but I'm enjoying the paychecks. So anyway, hopefully there won't be any new news that pops up, and I won't have to edit more in this. So anyway, let's just keep this baby rolling. Hey, let me jump in here a second and tell you about our sponsor. You know it, Volvo Trucks. You can check them out at volvotrucks.us. When you drive ancient, worn out, crappy equipment like I do at my company, you really appreciate good trucks. And you really appreciate comfort and how comfort affects your fatigue. I can tell you that after driving a beat-up junker all day long, that, I would feel a lot better in a brand new Volvo with Volvo Dynamic Steering. That's because Volvo Dynamic Steering is designed with the driver in mind to make our jobs easier. If you haven't heard me talk about it before, what this does is the system monitors the steering mechanism 2,000 times per second and makes little adjustments to help you drive straighter down the road. And it's designed to relieve stress on your back, your neck, your arms, your shoulders. All of that is reducing stress in you, making you a less fatigued driver and a better driver. So exactly what does Volvo Dynamic Steering do? Well, for instance, it can compensate for side winds, which is awesome if you've ever driven in Wyoming. It removes road vibrations, and it makes backing simpler thanks to the cool automatic return to center feature. That automatic return to center is so foreign to me that you just got to see the video to see how that works. Another really cool thing that Volvo Dynamic Steering does is it will correct for a blown front tire. If you've ever had that happen to you, I did over a bridge once, and it wasn't much fun. It's just not a fun process. The wheel wants to jerk out of your hands. You got to see the video on this one. They show, a cab view of the driver sitting there and simulate a blowout. Well, they don't simulate it. They do a blowout, on a controlled track. And, the steering wheel just barely moves. You can hardly tell he had a blowout at all. So it's just correcting for stuff like that. So again, all this is designed to make your job easier, to make you safer on the road, and to make you a happier driver. So, go and check out Volvo Dynamic Steering. It's like nothing you've ever seen or driven before. Volvo Dynamic Steering. Enjoy driving again. I will have links in the show notes to volvotrucks.us and also to their YouTube page. Go check them out. And thanks to Volvo Trucks for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. Okay, let's move on to the main topic. Not much to say here, except for I call this one Personal Safety Tips for Truckers. We're living in a world full of nut jobs. Maybe there's something floating around in the air beyond COVID-19. Maybe we're seeing the beginning of a zombie apocalypse of sorts. Not the laughably slow Dawn of the Dead zombies, but those really scary fast ones from 28 Days Later that are infected by some sort of rage virus. Whatever the cause, there's no doubt that it's a crazy time to be a truck driver. If you pay attention to the trucking industry news at all, you will have seen far too many stories of truckers pulling guns on each other, trainees stabbing their trainer to death, various muggings, and beatdowns by security guards. And if that weren't bad enough, now we have to worry about protesters blocking roadways and yanking innocent truckers out of their cabs and mobbing them. Okay, let me take a quick tangent here to address this briefly. I have no problem whatsoever with folks protesting against police brutality. If a cop is abusing their power, then they need to lose their job and not be protected by their fellow cops. And it doesn't matter what color the victim of that abuse is. So yeah, hey, keep it up if you're going about this in a peaceful way. However, if you're peacefully protesting by blocking a public roadway, then you're out of line. Sorry, no way around that. The First Amendment clearly gives you the right to assemble and protest, but only to the extent that you don't violate someone else's rights. All motorists, including truckers, have a right to use that roadway without having to worry about running over people standing in the middle of traffic. As for those of you who are looting in the name of Black Lives Matter, you are an embarrassment and a distraction to the real cause. You're thugs and thieves looking for a way to justify your actions. Unless, of course, you can explain the logic behind looting and trashing innocent local businesses and retailers like a Nike store, which has always supported your heroes like Colin Kaepernick. Makes no sense to me. But hey, back to truckers. How does this looting freight from innocent truckers further the cause of weeding out bad cops? It doesn't. So just admit what it is, an excuse to steal. For the record, you don't need to steal if you go out and get a job. Have you ever considered truck driving for a living? Turns out there are plenty of jobs to be had out here. Who knew? Well, of course you haven't considered that. That would require some ambition and real work. Okay, rant over. Boy, I'm sure I'm going to hear it about that one. So with this new threat to truckers coming from an unexpected source, I started thinking about personal safety tips for truckers. What can you do to prepare yourself for these dangerous times? I'll share some of my ideas on the subject, and I also reached out to my Trucker Dump Facebook and Slack groups to find out what some of your tips are. Now, I got a bit of a disclaimer here. Finding information on what kind of weapons are allowed in a commercial vehicle is difficult at best. I've always been a company driver, and I've asked many of my employers, and really the only universal truth I found is that 100% of them prohibit firearms in their trucks, but tire thumpers are okay. Gee, surprise there, right? When I ask about knives, tasers, pepper spray, and the like, I've always gotten wishy-washy answers that aren't really answers at all. You can tell they'd just prefer you curl up into a ball and not defend yourself when attacked than to approve you having anything resembling a weapon in your truck. Now please feel free to ask your company what they will allow in the truck, and if you get a solid answer, please email me at truckerdump@gmail.com and let me know. Now you'd think the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA, would want to weigh in on this, but they're remarkably silent on the subject of weapons in commercial vehicles. The only place I found the word weapon in the DOT regulations is when it's talking about the truck itself being used as a weapon by terrorists. So they're absolutely no help on the subject. So with that being said, let's brainstorm this subject and hopefully you can make some smart decisions that'll work for you. Of course, we're going to start out with firearms. Alright, first, let's debunk a long-standing trucking myth. Contrary to popular belief, it is not illegal to carry firearms in your truck, provided that you abide by all state and local ordinances. And that right there is the problem. These rules vary from state to state, and it's not easy to keep up with. I mean, honestly, are you really going to pull over at the state line and unload your handgun until you get to the other side of the state? Are you going to put it in a gun safe while crossing a state? Probably not. So instead, you leave it loaded all the time, which is effectively illegal in many states. So now you're breaking the law. Toss in the differing rules for those truckers with concealed carry permits, and now your head starts spinning. But hey, an unloaded gun is about as useless as a styrofoam pickaxe, right? You know, this no guns in the trucks myth gained ground largely because most trucking companies do not allow their employees to carry firearms in their trucks. I've never seen a stated reason why this is, but I suspect it's simply a matter of not wanting to hassle with their driver employees keeping abreast of all the state firearms laws. Also, they probably want to avoid getting into any situation where you have to use the firearm, and then the lawsuits that would likely point at them for allowing you to have it in the truck. Like many restrictions in the trucking industry, it ultimately comes down to an issue of reduced liability. So, should you carry a firearm? Well, if you're an owner-operator, the choice is yours. Carrying a gun is only a matter of learning the different state laws and following them to the best of your ability. Now, company drivers have a bigger choice to make. You can choose to carry a firearm because technically it isn't illegal to do so. But since it's usually against company policy, you'll likely get fired if you ever have to use it to defend yourself. But as a friend of mine likes to say, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. You know, that's a great point. I mean, if you find yourself in a position where you just saved yourself from personal harm or possibly death, do you really give a crap that you just lost your job? I don't think so. Now, I'm not telling you it's okay to break company policy, but I'm also telling you that in my 23 years of truck driving, I've never had a company representative search the truck I'm driving for anything, let alone a firearm. At least not to my knowledge. So if you don't leave your Glock laying out on the passenger seat in plain view while you're at a company terminal, then hey, whatever trips your trigger. Let's move on to another device that could be considered fatal. This would be knives. You know, there's another long-time myth that I've heard a lot that you can carry a knife as long as the blade isn't longer than 3 inches. I looked for information on this for a long time, and I can't find anything online or in the regulations to back that up. As far as I can tell, this is again up to each state. For instance, I read that Texas will allow a blade up to 5.5 inches as long as it's carried in a pouch on your belt. So hey, that blows that myth. My thoughts here are that, much like a firearm that's out of sight, out of mind, having a small blade would be a good thing to have. I keep a small pocket knife in my pocket that will lock when the blade is exposed. It probably wouldn't kill anyone unless I stab them in the eyeball, but it will certainly deter them if they see it or I give them a good jab with it. All right, if you're listening to this right now, I am doing something a little different this time around. I have got some links in here. For instance, I have a link to this small pocket knife that's very similar to mine. This is an Amazon affiliate link. This means that I have to reveal that to you. This means that if you click on this link and you, for instance, buy that knife, then I would get a small portion of that. This does not mean, it's important to know, this does not mean that it will cost you any more. You pay the same amount. It's just that I get a small referral fee for sending you over there. And also, the way this works is if while you're over there and say you just click on this to go look at the knife, anything you buy within 24 hours of that time, I will get just a small cut of that. So keep that in mind in the future because that would help the show and you wouldn't be spending any more money than you already have. So for instance, say you wanted to buy, some towels for your house. Well, you could go to one of these links, click on it, and then just, instead of buying a knife or whatever I've got up here, you could buy whatever you want, and I would get a small cut of that. So, again, I would appreciate if you would do that. Actually, I got a message from Amazon that said if I don't sell 3 things within the next 90 days, I will lose my affiliate account. So, I would appreciate some help on this. And a lot of these items are very small ticket items. So, hey, enough of the begging. I will just let you know from here on out if there is an affiliate link. And those links will all be in the show notes, okay? And honestly, this would be a really good time to be subscribed to the podcast, to the newsletter for the podcast, which, like I said in the last episode, I send out as soon as I publish each episode. And now I am including all of the links in there, in that email. So you would have them all right there in front of you. So if you're interested in doing that, head on over to abouttruckdriving.com/subscribe. And again, if you decide to buy something within 24 hours of going to that, I would certainly appreciate it. And if not, well, I'm going to live. I'm making good money at this company. But hey, I'm trying to make this thing work. All right. Anyway, let's move on. So we're back to the blade, right? I carry this little bitty pocket knife. And if anyone ever jumps on my running board, I can tell you that's going to be the first thing I grab. If they want to stick an arm or their head through my window, I'm going to cut them like a sushi chef with a tuna fillet. Now, we have to be reasonable with knives here, okay? If a DOT officer ever asks you if you have a weapon, I doubt they're going to get too bent out of shape if you have a pocket knife with a 3-inch blade. But they might just question your motives if you've got a machete mounted to your driver's seat. Another way to justify a good knife to a police officer is to have something that would serve a trucker as a safety device, like this cool 3-in-1 tactical knife that has a window glass breaker, a seatbelt cutter, and a serrated blade. Again, there's a link in the show notes to this. I really like this one. This is actually on my birthday wish list for the Evil Overlord. And hey, how can a cop argue with you for just wanting to rescue yourself from a fiery wrecked truck, right? And remember, in a pinch, a screwdriver will jab into an eyeball just as well as a knife will. Possibly better. Boy, will that guy be screwed. Yeah, I said that. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. All right, let's move on to tasers. You know, the great thing about having a taser as part of your arsenal is that you can disable an attacker before they even get close to you. The bad thing is that if you miss your target, you're out of ammo. I saw a video just the other day where some cops missed their target and hit an innocent civilian. Oops. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar with tasers, you're probably not, but just in case, I put a link in the show notes to the website. That is not an affiliate link. That particular one is not, by the way. Anyway, tasers work by shooting two darts at the assailant, which are connected to the pistol-like grip by 2 thin cables. Now, these cables transfer enough electric current to immobilize a grown man long enough for you to get away. Hopefully, he pees his pants in the process. I'm really hoping for that. Another bad thing is that a few states don't allow them to be used by average consumers unless you have a concealed carry permit. Other states, like Massachusetts, don't allow them at all. Check out the link in the show notes to the Taser website for each state's requirements. They're kind of all over the map, so if you're interested in this, check out that link. But perhaps the worst thing about tasers is the cost. Even an older model on Amazon is like $400, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that. If you want to use that and buy that, great. I'm sure the affiliate pay is great on that one, but I doubt anybody's going to do that. I got to tell you though, $400, I'm not sure what would hurt worse, the price or getting zapped by one. Speaking of getting zapped, let me pull one from the Trucker Dump Facebook group where Adrian Shippick, sorry if I'm saying your name there, Adrian, I reached out to you but haven't heard back yet, and I got to record this podcast. So from now on through the rest of this podcast, your last name is Shippick. Hope that's okay. Anyway, he wrote, they sell stun gun flashlights that have both use and protection. Why, yes, they do, Adrian. Stun guns like the one I have an affiliate link to here are something that truckers can definitely consider. Like Adrian said, many models also include a standard flashlight. But hey, if you want to double the fun with double mint gum, make sure you get a stun gun flashlight combo with a really bright light, like this other affiliate link I put in here. This baby is a double whammy. Now, if you've ever been blasted in the eyes by a bright light, you know how disorienting it can be. That might be just enough time for you to evade a thug's grasp and run away while he's seeing spots. Stun guns are also easier to deal with than tasers because most states allow them without any special permits. Obviously, you need to be aware of those guidelines, and I put a link in the show notes to those. But in all seriousness, if I'm being attacked, my mind isn't really focused on the legality of the weapon in my hand. I'd zap that sucker and deal with the consequences later. Another advantage of the stun gun over the taser is the cost. You can pick up a good stun gun with a bright flashlight for under $50. That's about an eighth of the cost of a taser. And of course, there's an Amazon affiliate link in here to a really cool one. By the way, every one of these podcasts from now on is not going to be filled with, Amazon affiliate links. It's just, this one just happened to lend itself to that, so I went ahead and did it. But there is one distinct disadvantage that the stun gun has compared to the taser, and that's in order to stun an attacker, you need to be close enough to make contact with the person. Now, hopefully it'll never get to that point, but if it does, light that sucker up. Let's move on to pepper spray. Pepper spray is a great option for the cost-conscious trucker who still wants some personal protection. You can get it quite readily for under $10. Heck, I saw some at Office Depot today. But of course, I've put an Amazon affiliate link in here. Off a $10 item, I'll probably get about 2 cents. Woohoo! But hey, it'll keep my account open. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar, pepper spray is actually a chemical agent that when sprayed near the face will cause pain, burning, and temporary blindness, which is a result of inflammation of the eyes. It also causes burning of the lungs, which leads to shortness of breath, which is something that'll come in handy as you're trying to run away with your own shortness of breath caused by sitting on your trucker butt for 11 hours a day. It's true. Furthermore, pepper spray is legal in all 50 states, although some do have certain restrictions such as the size of the spray bottle or that they might have an age requirement to carry a bottle of it, or a little spray can, whatever they call it, dispenser. If you want to check out the state laws, I put a link in the show notes. What's so great about pepper spray is it's not only expensive, but you can use it from up to 10 feet away. Just make sure that nozzle's pointing away from you when you start the hose down. Speaking of stuff that sprays, Adrian Shippick from the Trucker Dump Facebook group says, I hear wasp spray works, an aerosol can of something, and a lighter too. You think, Adrian? Well, hey, I guess if you're desperate, you can go all MacGyver on a bad guy. But ouch. Just ouch. Next up, we got tire thumpers. This is probably the weapon most truckers already have. But hey, don't settle for any old tire thumper. Let's get creative. Once again, I am facing the fact that I'm probably going to pronounce someone's last name wrong. I reached out to Paul. Well, I've reached out to a lot of these guys in here and gals that I mentioned from Facebook, and I haven't heard back how to pronounce their names yet, and that's my fault for getting this done at the last second. But hey, I cannot wait. I'm late enough as is, as you know. So we're just going to go forward with this. Anyway, enough excuses. So I'm just going to pronounce this Paul Durkach. He is from the Trucker Dump Facebook group. He says, I keep one of those wooden tire thumper baseball bats in the bunk for protection. Of course, put an affiliate link in here. Of course, you know what they look like. But hey, if you don't have one, you can get one through this link. I just wonder if Paul's going to yell, batter up, before he uses that bald guy's head as a baseball. Or hey, if you want to add a little extra punch to your baseball-themed tire thumping, you can always upgrade to an aluminum version of that baseball bat. Bada 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 swing bada. Amazon affiliate link, of course. Truckers have other tools too. Canon Brian from the Trucker Dump Slack group says, I like to keep a framing hammer or a tire club near me while I'm in the truck. I put a link to a framing hammer in here. Sure, why not, Canon? I mean, we do need to pull nails from the trailer fuller now and then, right? It's just a pleasant perk that either end of that bad boy could be used to bash in a criminal's skull, as proven several times by the Walking Dead television show. Speaking of nails, sometimes those really long ones require a crowbar. They make little crowbars, link in the show notes, but why settle when you can get the full-size version for serious tire thumping, nail removal, and jaw breaking? Link to the big one, too. And of course, every flatbedder has a pry bar. Link. To tighten their load straps. Hey, be careful with that pointy thing. You could put an eye out. Now, if you want to go for the ultimate trucker tool, you really need to check out this hammer, pry bar, axe tool that looks like it belongs in a dungeon of a medieval castle, or maybe something you might want to take to a ceremony to sacrifice a virgin by a volcano. I can hear it now. Why, yes, officer. I realize there's an axe blade on there. You never know when you might be stranded in North Dakota and need to chop down a tree to build a fire, right? Never mind the fact that you'd be hard-pressed to find a tree in North Dakota. This next tip, or weapon, I should say, well, it actually kind of surprised me. Snuck right up on me. Dave White from the Trucker Dump Facebook group says, the fire extinguisher would make a good deterrent to persuade that nasty person to leave you alone. Trucker Dump Facebook group member Andrew Acock, I think I'm saying that right, sorry if I'm not Andrew, put it a bit more bluntly by suggesting that fire extinguisher will work both spray to the face or used as a blunt force. Okay, I admit, the cheesy blunt pun is intended by me. Andrew played no part in this cheesiness. Jeff Hardy from the Trucker Dump Facebook group agrees. He says, I've brought my fire extinguisher into the bunk with me for shady areas. If somebody gets in, spray them in the face and club them over the head. I pity the fool that messes with these guys. Paul Durkach from the Trucker Dump Facebook group is back for another use of the fire extinguisher. He says, I keep a small fire extinguisher in the bunk. The way these new plastic trucks burn, I want a fighting chance to get out. Well, that's a good use of it, Paul. All right, let's get a bit technical here. According to 49 CFR Part 393.95, link in the show notes, the minimum requirement for a commercial vehicle not hauling hazardous materials is one fire extinguisher with a minimum rating of 5 BC, while a hazmat load requires one with 10 BC minimum. For the record, the number there stands for how many square feet of fire the device is capable of extinguishing. I didn't know that before this episode. So as you can see, 5 to 10 square feet isn't much, so you may as well not bother putting on your toy fireman helmet the next time you see a trailer engulfed in flames on the shoulder of a highway. You might as well go up and pee on it for all the good it's going to do. Now the B in the C stands for what kind of fires can be put out. The B means flammable liquids can be quenched, and C is good for electrical equipment. So that's good to know. And there's a link in the show notes for more description on how that description works. You know, that weapon, fire extinguisher, has been sitting beneath me for 23 years, and never once had I thought to use it as a weapon. But it would clearly work for every trucker. Not only is it free to every trucker, but the spray causes just enough discomfort to an attacker for you to escape without causing them personal damage. Not that they deserve that nicety. But hey, that dent in his skull from swinging it down on his head could be another story entirely. Perhaps best of all, Paul Durkach from the Trucker Dump Facebook group reminds us that also this is no problem with border security or DOT officers, as they can't call it a weapon. Heck, Paul, if they're anything like me for the past 23 years, they won't even see it as a possibility of being a weapon. All right, let's move on to a few trailer hacks now. Red F. Griffin from the Trucker Dump Facebook group has a good one. He says, when you park, put tension on the kingpin, set the trailer brakes, and pull a little before setting the tractor brakes. You can't pull the fifth wheel when there's pressure on the jaws. Well, Red, we all know that from trying to unlock a stubborn fifth wheel, but I never thought of it as a personal safety tip. But it would certainly work. You know, we've all seen the videos lately of these protestors trying to unhook the tractor from the trailer while it's slowly trying to make its way through a crowd of people. They could just as easily try it while you're parked. Good luck with that if you use Red's tip. Thanks, Red. Dave White from the Facebook group has another tip on parking. Be careful where you park and write down truck numbers and plates of people that look suspicious, especially if they're parked near your truck. If in doubt, just leave and find another truck stop or Walmart. Well, Dave, I don't know about the Walmart with all the truck booting going on lately, but I get the gist of what you're saying. Good tip. Adrian Shippick from the Facebook group is back for another trailer hack. He says, put zip ties or clamps on the glad hands if you stay hooked to one trailer, or if you don't mind the work of redoing them every disconnect. You know, Adrian, that's an excellent tip. This one actually reminds me of putting a home security sign in your front yard, even though you don't really have a security system installed. The thieves are always going to go for the point of least resistance. Hopefully they'll see your zip ties or your clamps and move on to the next truck. Not that we're wishing anything bad on that next trucker. But hey, better them than you, right? Next up, we got some tips for when you're parked and you're trying to sleep. Dave White from the Facebook group has an idea. He says, I've thought of using a ratcheting load strap with hooks from door handle to door handle inside the cab to keep nasty people out. Well, Dave, apparently that works because Gwen Vella from the Trucker Dump Slack group says, I use a strap to double secure my door shut from the inside so people can't open my doors while I'm sleeping. Perfect. Trevor Dunkel from the Trucker Dump Facebook group and the Slack group, as a matter of fact, he has an idea for a variation on that. He says you can use the seatbelts as a secondary door lock. Yes, you can, Trevor. I've been known to loop the seatbelts through the door handle and latch them when I'm in a seedy area. That is, if it's the type of the doors with something you can loop them through. Not all doors have that. But hey, it gives me just a bit of extra security knowing that there will be an extra step for a perp to swing that door open. But Travis Jellison from the Facebook group and also the Slack group, and you might recognize his name from the previous episode, which was Trucker Dump 145, being an oversized, overweight load truck driver. You know, he makes a point. He rebuts this just a little bit. He says, just an observation, but if you are seatbelting or strapping your doors, it might hinder getting out of the truck in an emergency, like a fire. Don't lock yourself in. Plus, bad guys can break a window and cut the strap or seatbelt. Well, you know, honestly, the chances of anyone breaking into your truck are probably as slim as your truck catching on fire. But that is something to think about, so thanks for the reminder, Travis. And yes, a bad guy can break a window and cut a strap or seatbelt, but again, that's one extra step they have to take before getting to me. Also, I'll point out that if you've watched any of those videos recently, it's apparently a lot harder to bust out a window than the movies make it out to be. You know, in the movies, somebody just rears back a little bit and rams an elbow through it. That don't work. In these videos, you can see they're throwing stuff at the windshield and the side window, and I didn't see any that busted. It could happen, but, hopefully you'll get out of the situation before they shatter. All right, we've talked about lots of tips when we're in the truck, but what about when we're outside the truck? Paul Durkach from the Facebook group says, swallow your pride and wear a high visibility vest when crossing the parking lot. That's a good idea, Paul. Sometimes it isn't a criminal who does you harm, but a careless trucker going too fast in a truck stop parking lot. I have a coworker who was hit by a yard truck at one of our terminals. He's had hip damage and pain ever since. It's a possibility that some high visibility clothing might have prevented that. Who knows? Andrew Aycock from the Facebook group reminds us to keep your head on a swivel while at the truck stop or at a shipper receiver. Make eye contact with possible threats so they know you see them. Yep, good point, Andrew. Again, criminals look for easy targets. If you show awareness and look them in the eye, they're far less likely to choose you as their next victim. Unless, of course, you're giving them the stink eye. Jeff Hardy from the Facebook group weighs in for the first time. He says, leave the Bluetooth in the truck and get off the phone. You can't possibly pay attention to everything around you when you're distracted. Super Sweats with the Bluetooth on, gabbing away is an easy target as he waddles across the truck stop, paying no attention to anything. He's also not going to pay attention as he walks out in front of that truck going mock stupid through the parking lot. Jeff, I'm going to agree with everything you said, despite the fact that you just described me. Seriously, though, Jeff, that's a great tip and a great way to end this podcast. And by the way, I don't waddle. Yet. All right, let's wrap this up by reminding you of the obvious. First, we just need to make a little effort to prepare ourselves for the worst. I, and everyone else guilty of phone distraction, needs to pull our heads out of our keisters and focus on our surroundings. Don't forget the obvious things like parking in well-lit areas and parking close to the building. You can also choose to walk around the row of trucks instead of through the dark walkways between the trucks. Also, remember that there is strength in numbers. You're far more likely to get mugged while you're parked on a side street in an industrial area than you are at a well-lit truck stop or rest area. Now, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, let me beat you to the punch here. I realized I stated in Trucker Dump 129, 4 ways to become a more efficient trucker, like in the show notes, that I like to park at shippers and receivers to save my driving hours. But you have to be smart about that. Park inside their gate if you can, and don't park near the road, if you have that option anyway. Out of sight, out of mind, Listen, there are nutbags everywhere out here nowadays. Keep a low profile and avoid confrontation like I talked about in Trucker Dump 132, should we call out bad truckers. Link in the show notes if you haven't heard that one yet. An inconsiderate truck driver being a butt munch just isn't worth your life or your well-being. As for these thugs, well, I guess just be prepared by following some of the tips you've just heard. That way, when some worthless excuse of a human being tries to enter your truck, you can break their arm with your tire thumper and spray them in the face with your pepper spray. And hey, if they keep coming after all that, well, what the heck? Go ahead and get out your aerosol can of Aquanet hairspray and a Zippo and light them up. But of course, then you want to be a sweetheart and use your fire extinguisher to put out the flames. We aren't animals, But wait, maybe you'd better go ahead and zap them with your stun gun a couple of times, just to be on the safe side. All right, well, that does it for that. I really hope you get some good information out of that, some good tips you can follow, and maybe some devices or something you'll get, to help with your personal safety. Never can be too safe nowadays. It's getting crazy out here. But anyway, I want to thank everybody who participated, gave me some help in this in the Facebook group and the Slack group. I really enjoyed putting this episode together. It was a lot of fun. I hope that you will join the Facebook group and the Slack group. There'll be links in the show notes to join both those, of course, and, may participate in the future. I asked some questions on Facebook and Slack, whether, people in there would like to see what links I'm going to talk about, like news stories and things like that before the fact. And most people said they didn't mind, getting those links ahead of time. And my thought was, that I could get more of your ideas. If there's a news story that comes out and I publish it in Facebook and Slack, that you will have the opportunity to weigh in on it, and then I can include more of your input in the show. And I think that would be really neat to do. So again, join those groups. I would love it if you did, the Facebook and the Slack group. And while you're at it, why don't you just go ahead and subscribe on the email? All of that stuff is at abouttruckdriving.com/subscribe. And while you're there, go ahead and buy both books for 25% off. Man, am I a useless pimp or what? All right, let's get on with the feedback. I don't think we have much, do we? I guess you'll find out after this little ditty.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
We do have feedback. Let's start out with JJ Perky, who rose to the call when I asked a question on the last podcast. He writes, Todd, on your last podcast, you asked a question regarding owner-operators shutting down during COVID. You wondered, isn't some money better than no money? I'd like to give you my view on this. I do not speak for all owner-operators, just myself and the way I see the situation. A loss is a loss. If you're not making enough to cover all the expenses, then there isn't the question, some money is better than no money, because at the end of the run, you're still in the negative. So to that, I ask, where is that some money you speak of? You stated you understood that fuel cost drops, but truck payment and insurance is still there. You are correct, but there is a cost that is so often overlooked, wear and tear of the equipment. So if I'm running at a loss and my equipment is receiving normal wear and tear, the loss just became greater. That's why I figure a maintenance cost into my operating cost. I ask myself, what's the better of two evils? Run at a loss or park at a loss? If I'm going to lose money, I would rather do it at my house with my wife, sleeping in a much better bed, not sharing a bathroom with strangers, showering with flip-flops, etc. I think you see the point here. When you run at a loss, that means something will get put on a waiting list to get paid. 100% of the time, my paycheck is the first to be put on hold. Working for no pay at 1,200 miles plus from home is a tough pill to swallow. I can assure you that I'm not doing this for charity. I'm a for-profit business. Anyway, that's my opinion and how I view the situation. I'm sure other owner-operators might have different ways of running their business. I'm always willing to hear their thoughts and take notes if I think it'll help me be more profitable or efficient. Hope this helped. Well, it did help a lot, JJ, because, as you could tell in the last podcast, I was really confused. And this did open up my eyes to the maintenance and the wear and tear. I, of course, do overlook that stuff because I am a company driver. And, that's just what we do. I just drive the stinking truck. So anyway, JJ, I appreciate you answering the call for help. If you are an owner-operator out there and you have thoughts on why you would shut down completely rather than just run at a slight loss, please email me at truckerdump@gmail.com and let me know like JJ did. JJ wrote back, though, and said, Hey, Todd, asking for an invite to the Slack group sounds very demotivating. I've never had to ask to join in with slackers. I've always just showed up and we did nothing together. So this is a first for me. Can I get an invite, please? Yes, you can, JJ. Always love it. I love sarcasm. It's just great. Keep it coming. And looking forward to some of that sarcasm in the Trucker Dump Slack group. There is, well, Lord knows there's plenty of that going around already as is, but we can always use more. Next up, Truett Ficklin wrote in with an interesting one. He writes, Todd, I happened upon your podcast this week. I wanted to tell you that I enjoy it immensely. I'm not new to trucking, but like you, I'm new to the LTL world. In fact, I think we are probably with the same company, given some of the hints you've mentioned in the podcast. I'm out of Fort Wayne. Hope you got the call back since freight is picking up. I somehow never got laid off, even though I'm second from the bottom of the board. Just wanted to drop you a quick line and let you know to keep up the good work on the podcast. I can see where folks new to trucking could find it very helpful, but it's also entertaining and interesting for us old hands as well. Well, it's always good to hear. I know sometimes old hands, as you put it, don't learn a lot from this podcast, but I hope that it just opens up a little eyes and makes you rethink about certain things that are going on. Maybe just some new ideas here and there. And as I've said before, I don't look at this as this podcast is just me. It is a community around, answering these emails, sharing their thoughts, their stories. I'm always interested in that kind of stuff. And I think that makes the podcast way more interesting. But I have to admit, Truett, he did write back and he did guess the company I work for. And, of course, that company is... No. Of course, I'm not going to tell you. But he is right, and I hope, Truett, that I will run into you one of these days out there on the road. Thanks for writing in and listening. Next up, I got 3 really quick emails from Michael Mazer. Hope I pronounced that right, Michael. Jake Ritchie and Austin Anderson, they all wanted to join the Trucker Dump Slack group, and that is a done deal, guys. I look forward to talking to you in there. Again, link in the show notes if you want to join the Slack group. As a matter of fact, I think everybody left in the emails here have wanted to join the Slack group. I know Pete Ryall is. He says he's a fuel hauler and he wanted to join the Slack group. Well, Pete, your invite is sent. I don't believe some of these guys, some of you I've actually seen in there yet, but jump on in there. The water's fine. Next up, we hear from Mark Wachowski. Hope I pronounced that right, Mark. He writes, "Hello, sir. I was wondering if I could get an invite to the Slack group. I have been driving large trucks for over 25 years. I started as a volunteer fireman driving pumpers and tankers, then got on with the towing company driving everything from a 1957 Jeep Recovery to Class 8 wreckers. And I've also hauled quite a few oversized loads for a company that builds park models. That's a 400 square foot housing unit. Thank you very much," he says. Well, thank you, Mark. Put you on the list. Your wish is my command, and you are a part of the Slack group now. Although I don't believe I've talked to you much in there either. A lot of people join. Some people stick around. Some people don't. It's all good. Just if it's your bag, if it's your cup of tea, that's fine. If it's not, hey, no hard feelings. But give it a shot. That or the Facebook group. And like I said, I am trying to be more active in the Facebook group by putting more links in there and getting more feedback from you. Because, hey, let's face it, you're way smarter than I am. All right. These next 2, well, they're kind of interesting. This next one is from a gentleman named Gabriel Ibanez Romero. He writes, "Hello, Todd. I heard your interview at Payload Podcast by Truck Driver Power and wonder if you could add me to your Slack group." He says, "I'm working as an innovation leader at one department in Volvo trucks in Sweden. So that means I often have a say in how future digital services and features in the truck will look like. I like to listen to drivers and understand your hinders and motivations. That knowledge is for me the basics of delivering useful solutions. At the moment, I am working the most with driver time management and also range prediction for E-mob trucks, which I assume are the electric trucks." Well, Gabriel, that sounds like a really cool job. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but Volvo Trucks is a sponsor of this episode, so that's really cool too. And I hope you get some use out of the Trucker Dump Slack group and, you learn something. I think it's really cool that you've got the right idea that if you want to, figure out what drivers want, listen to truck drivers. That's pretty much a no-brainer, but I don't think a lot of people in the trucking industry do that. They think they know what truck drivers want, but they don't really. You got to listen to the truck drivers to find out. Anywho, thanks for writing in, Gabriel. We're going to move on to Chris to finish this up. And Chris is another non-trucker. He says, "Good afternoon. I've been listening to your podcast for many months now, and I absolutely love it. While I may not listen for the same reasons as most of your listeners, I get excited when a new episode is released. Well, Chris, that goes for both of us. I get excited when a new episode is released too, because it happens so dang rarely. He says, I'm a team lead for the trucking account managers team at CoverWallet. He says, I've been working on strictly trucking insurance for over 2 years and have over 5 years of experience in the insurance industry. Your podcast has helped me learn a lot about the trucking industry to better relate and make sure that I provide more than just insurance advice, but overall advice to improve my clients' DOT scores that ultimately results in lower rates, which results in more profit for the trucking company. Cool. So again, thanks for the information and entertainment that your podcast provides. I'd love to be a part of the Slack channel to chime in and help in regards to insurance questions and to learn even more from one of the most important industries in the world. We got that right, Chris, and thanks for noticing that. Again, this is an outsider. Well, an outsider. He's in the trucking industry in a way because he sells insurance, and he wanted to make sure. Now, this is one of those things. I'm very careful about who I let into the Trucker Dump Slack group and the Facebook group. I've got one pending on Facebook right now that clearly has nothing to do with trucking, and she probably wants to get in there and show her boobs, and I'm sorry. I'm not going to let her do it, guys. Sorry. But I know that disappoints some of you, but that's all right. Anyway, I did make sure that Chris's goal was not to sell, and that's not his purpose, and he was completely fine with that. So he is now a member of the Trucker Dump Slack group. And I hope, Chris, that you learned something and you get to talk to us all about that. It is kind of funny though, because he wrote me back and asked me what kinds of video games I play. He says, I'm curious what you're into. That is a sign. That is the way you get somebody's attention when you write an email. You actually know the show. That's something I talk about on the show as of recently. So he's listened to episodes. He knows that I'm into video games, and that really perks you up when you hear that. If anybody is interesting, well, I got started back into the PlayStation 4, playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That was my nephews all suggested that I do that. But after that, they quickly got me into both Fortnite and Destiny. Now, I probably played Destiny the most. I kind of suck at all of them, honestly, because I'm old and not fast, but I don't have that twitch reflex like I used to. But anyway, I'd like to be playing these video games, especially Destiny, a lot more, but hey, I got the podcast to do, and I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the podcast or not, but, I've been putting together a lot of furniture here at the house for the Evil Overlord, for our office, and, for my nephews. And I've just been super busy. That's why this podcast is getting out late as is. Hopefully I will get another one out in just a couple of weeks and kind of get back on schedule. So maybe the frequency will pick up in July. Maybe. Don't count on it. All right. Well, thanks to everyone who wrote in. That'd be JJ, Truitt, Michael, Jake, Austin, Pete, Mark, Gabriel, and Chris. And of course, all the people who participated in the main topic there from Facebook. And I don't even want to go back through all that list, because quite honestly, my voice is crapping out on me. So anyway, let's get on out of here. And I will do that by clicking this button right here and getting the music started. So, do you have some more tips for personal safety? If it's something we didn't talk about today, shoot me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com. Better yet, send an audio comment to that address. Now, I hate to pimp the Amazon affiliate links again, but I'm going to anyway. I'm really hoping to get even 3 small orders so I can keep that account alive. Okay, my begging is officially over. Until the next podcast anyway. For everything I do, including my books, the podcast, and contact info, head over to abouttruckdriving.com. And hey, thanks for doing the job you do, and thanks for listening. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. Check 1, check 2, check 3, check 4. Check 1, check 2, check 3, check 4, check. Why is it not working? Check 1, check 2, check 1, check. Oh boy, why is this not working? I don't understand it. What is going on? This next story is kind of what? For instance, I read that Texas will allow a blade up to 5.5 inches long as. For instance, I read that Texas will allow a blade. Check 1, check 2, check 3. Am I getting some results? Hello, check 1, check. Set the trailer brakes and pull a little bit. Set the trailer brakes. Also remember that there is strength in numbers. Numbers. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Oh, what is that little mark up there? That doesn't make any sense. What the heck is going on here? Huh. Well, that's new. Showering with flip-flops, etc. Showering with flip-flops. I think I could say that. I'm going to cut them like a sushi set. I'm going to cut them like a sushi chef. I'm going to cut them like a sushi chef. Good Lord.